had a client sit across from me a few months ago. Sharp, articulate, successful in every measure that you would put on a resume. She ran her own business. She managed a team, the kind of person other people describe as got it together. She'd booked the session to ask about a decision whether to expand the business, whether to take a risk that had been sitting on her desk for months. Practical, grounded, a business question. But halfway through the reading, Spirit didn't bring through anything about the business. They brought through a much younger version of her, 9, maybe 10 years old, who was simply tired. Not tired from work, tired from performing. She sat across from me and cried in a way she told me afterwards she hadn't let herself do in years. Not because of grief, not because of loss. In a way, we usually talk about it on this show, but because something in her recognized itself. Something got seen that had been unseen for a very, very long time. And that's when it hit me. Not for the first time, but freshly and clearly. Most people who come to me aren't lost. They're not confused about their path or waiting for a sign or needing permission to make decisions. They're just still playing a character they built decades ago to stay safe. And nobody has ever told them the performance is allowed to end. This episode is about that character, the identity you built to survive, where it came from, what it's quietly costing you, why the spiritual world gets awakening wrong when it sells it as light and ease, and what's actually underneath. The performance when it finally and inevitably falls away. We also do something we haven't done much on this show. Near the end, I'm going to guide you through a short meditation. Not a woo-woo fluffy one, a grounded practice to help you actually meet the self that's been buried under all this performing, even just for a few short minutes. So if you're driving, that's absolutely fine. Just don't close your eyes for that part. You can always come back to it later. I'm Matilda, and this is Beyond This. It's been a surprising week. That's what I have to say about this week. Not to me necessarily, because I felt a lot of this shift coming. I have warned July will feel a mix of explosive and relief. We saw the passing of Lindsey Graham that has caused controversy. Many people are celebrating, and many people are not. Many people are sad. In my mind, I'm neither here nor there with him. I'm not going to celebrate the passing of someone, but I'm not going to celebrate their life either. There can be a balance. And then, sadly, another one of my predictions happened. If you listened to last week's episode of Beyond This, I talked about us losing an Australian icon. And yes, he was born in New Zealand, but we claimed him as our own. The great, the wonderful, the hilarious, the charismatic Mr. Sam Neill passed just yesterday. And we are going to see a lot more passings this month. And I'm going to talk about that a little later in my predictions. I do want to raise something with you, and I've talked about it on my Patreon. I've talked about it on live on TikTok, and I have made videos about it. I want to talk about this holding on to the orange one, Mr. Donald Trump dying. I want to stop that. Not him dying, but the constant chatter about when. The harder you hold on to something, the more you are repelling it. And I will say that again and again. Do I want the guy in power? No, I do not. Do I like him? No, I do not. I think I've made that clear over the years. But I teach energy. I live in energy. You live in energy. Stop it. I'm not going to name names, but there are some people that come into my lives, wherever they are, and something has happened that puts things on the right pathway and it's never enough. It's like, but it doesn't matter because I want the big one to happen. It doesn't matter because I want this. The negativity, and I'm going to start blocking people, whether you are on my Patreon or on my live. If you come into my lives and it's negative, 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 I am not saying that you don't deserve to feel the way that you feel, because everyone's emotion is valid. But when we are putting out that amount of negativity, it is going to have repercussions. Write it down, pop it in a drawer, pop it in the freezer. All of you, put Donald Trump's name on a piece of paper and stick it in the freezer. That's going to have more effect than constantly holding on to the waiting. When's he going to? When's he going to? I don't think we're far off. I don't think we're far. I'm going to correct that because I don't think we're far off him not being president anymore. How that happens, I am not completely sure. I think it's going to depend on a lot of things that happen over the next coming weeks. But I'll talk about that a bit later. But let's talk about why we build the survival self. Let's start with something incredibly unromantic because I have promised you no woo woo from the start of this show, and I intend to keep that promise. This isn't a spiritual flaw, and it isn't a character defect. It's basic behavioral wiring. And understanding it as wiring rather than failure is the first step to being able to look at it honestly. Every child is running a constant, mostly unconscious calculation. What gets me love, safety, and belonging in this specific environment? Not love and safety in general, love and safety here in this family with these particular people under these particular conditions. Children are extraordinarily good at pattern recognition. They notice faster than any adult gives them credit for. Exactly what earns connection and exactly what earns distance, criticism, or withdrawal. For some of us, the answer that emerged was be good, be easy, don't need too much, don't ask for too much space, and you'll be safe. For others, it's be strong, hold it together, be the one who doesn't fall apart. Because someone in this family already is, and there isn't room for two. For others, it's be impressive, achieve, perform, prove your worth through output. Because love in this house seemed to arrive attached to results. For others, it's be invisible. Don't take up space. Don't be seen too much, and you won't become a target. And for some, be still. Be the peacekeeper. manage everyone else's emotional weather so the house stays calm because calm is what safety looks like. None of these are character flaws. I want to say that plainly and let it sit because so much of the personal growth space treats these patterns as things to be ashamed of, when actually they are intelligent adaptations. A child who figures out early which self gets rewarded is doing exactly what a developing nervous system is built to do: optimize for safety over truth. Because at that age, truth doesn't keep you alive, safety does. Here's where behavioral economics actually gives us something useful, because this isn't just psychological, it's decision theory. We are from the very beginning loss averse creatures. The pain of losing connection is felt far more intensely than the pleasure of gaining authenticity, especially for a child who has no other frame of reference and nowhere else to go for safety. So the calculation isn't really a choice at all. It's closer to a survival algorithm running in the background, adjusting behavior in real time to minimize the risk of abandonment. The problem isn't that we built this self. The problem is that nobody told us it had an expiry date. It gets rewarded, so it calcifies. Praise reinforces it. Relief reinforces it. The absence of punishment reinforces it. By adulthood, it's not a strategy anymore. It's worn as identity, indistinguishable, at least from the inside, from who you actually are. You stopped saying, I learned to be strong so the house would stay calm, and start saying flatly, I am a strong person, as if it's an immutable fact about your nature rather than a function you built to survive a specific set of circumstances. That, in most cases, can no longer even exist. I've spoken to those on my Patreon, and I don't like making this podcast about me and my experiences, but I am estranged from my father and my brothers. I was told to be quiet. I grew up in a very abusive household. Was it classed as abuse at the time? No. The abuse came from my brothers and my mother. But if I yelled and cried, I would get a beating. I'll give you an example. At 7 or 8 years old, I collected China clowns. They sound so irrelevant now. You know the pirouette clowns that we used to get in the 80s, late 70s? And I loved those clowns. And on my birthday, I got two. I got a pirouette clown and I got the most gorgeous harlequin clown that used to wind up and would play Send in the Clowns. Absolutely stunning. And I loved those for the 5 minutes I had them. We are sat at the breakfast table on the morning of my birthday. And my younger brother, who has, as with many families, the loudest, the most difficult person gets the attention. My younger brother picked those clowns up and he smashed them head on together and they broke into a million pieces. And as any young girl on her birthday, I cried and I cried and I screamed. And because I had disturbed the peace, I had disturbed the peace from my reaction to something my brother did, I got the hiding of my life. So I learned not to show emotion. I learned to keep my pain quiet. And my brothers then could beat me and abuse me as they wished because I knew that if I reacted, I would then get a beating from my mother. But what I want listeners to take from this segment isn't guilt, it's recognition. If you can name the role you built, the good one, the strong one, the impressive one, the invisible one, the peacekeeper, you've already done something most people never do. You've separated the strategy from the self. And that separation is where everything else in this episode becomes possible. Here's what rarely gets said out loud. In wellness spaces or spiritual ones, the survival self doesn't just cost you comfort or ease or a bit of stress here and there. It costs you access, real structural access. Access to your own intuition, access to spirit. If that's language that lands for you, or simply access to your own deeper knowing, if it isn't, access, frankly, to yourself, to the actual texture of what you want, what you feel, and what's true underneath what you've learned to perform. Think about it practically, because I think this is easier to understand in mechanical terms than in the abstract spiritual ones. If a substantial amount of your daily energy is going towards managing your image, being reliable, being fine, being the one who copes, being endlessly capable, there is a very little bandwidth left over for the quieter work of actually listening. Discernment requires quiet. Intuition requires you to not already know the answer you're supposed to give, the answer that keeps the role intact. And most people in the grip of a survival identity are so fluent in the correct answer that they've lost the ability to hear any other one. I feel this constantly in readings, and I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say it's one of the most common patterns I encounter. More common than grief, more common than unfinished business. People who are so deeply committed to being the strong one that they cannot receive a message of rest or grief or simply stopping because it doesn't fit the role they've built their entire adult identity around. Spirit will bring the message through anyway, because spirit doesn't negotiate with your self concept. And I have watched more than once a grown adult argue with the energy of their own deceased mother about whether they're allowed to be tired. That's not a metaphor. That happens in my sessions regularly. This is where I want to name something plainly, because I think it matters more than almost anything else in this episode. Burnout isn't just overwork. It gets talked about that way constantly. Too many hours, too much on the plate, not enough rest. But in my experience, and I'd guess in a fair amount of yours, if you're honest with yourself, burnout is very often self-abandonment wearing the costume of loyalty and reliability. You didn't collapse because you simply did too much. You collapsed because you spent years, maybe decades, managing a performance instead of living an actual life. And the performance finally became more expensive than your system could sustain. There's a quieter cost too, one that doesn't get talked about as much: the cost to the people around you. When you're operating from a survival self rather than an actual self, the people closest to you are, in a real sense, never quite meeting you. They're actually meeting the good one, the strong one, the impressive one. And a part of you knows that, even if you can't name it. Which is why so many people with deeply calcified survival identities describe a strange, persistent loneliness, even inside relationships, that look from the outside completely fine. I don't say any of this to be bleak. I say it because I think naming the actual cost clearly, without softening it, is what makes people willing to do something about it. Vague discomfort is easy to ignore. A precise cost is much harder to keep paying once you've actually seen it. This is the part of the episode I actually want to push back on publicly, because I think the spiritual community gets this wrong constantly. And I think that mistake causes real, avoidable suffering. Awakening gets sold almost universally in wellness marketing as light, as clarity, as butterflies, and a better morning routine and a slightly nicer wardrobe. You'll see it dressed up in soft pastel graphics on social media. You're awakening, as though it's a spa day for the soul. In my experience, and in the actual pattern I see across genuine spiritual openings, not the curated version, the real one. Awakening usually looks like loss at first. A job ends, sometimes suddenly, sometimes humiliatingly. A marriage ends, a diagnosis lands, either your own or someone close to you. An identity you built a whole adult life around simply stops working. All at once, or slowly enough that you don't notice until it's already gone. And there's no montage, there's no soft piano music, there's just flaw. The ego reads this as catastrophe. I'm falling apart. Something has gone so badly wrong. I need to fix this immediately and get back to how things were. What's often actually happening underneath that panic is something closer to something that was never really mine to begin with, is finally leaving, not being taken from you cruelly. Leaving the way something leaves when it's served its purpose and has nothing left to give. Here's a discernment tool, because I don't believe in leaving people with a nice idea and no practical way to use it. That's not what this show is for. Ask yourself two questions when you're in the middle of a collapse, whatever shape that collapse is taking. First of all, is this loss taking something that was truly serving my actual life, or something that was only ever serving my image? Be honest here. Not everything that falls apart is a survival identity dying. Sometimes loss is just loss, and it deserves to be grieved as exactly that, without a spiritual bow tied around it. But often, if you sit with the question honestly, you'll notice the thing that's ending was propping up a version of you that other people needed. Not a version of you that you actually needed. The second question is, if I stopped performing this version of myself today entirely, what would I actually lose? Versus, what would I only fear losing? This one is harder because fear is very convincing. It will tell you that if you stop being the strong one, everyone will leave. If you stop being the impressive, you'll become worthless. If you stop being the peacekeeper, the whole family will fall apart. Almost none of that is actually true. It's the survival self defending its own existence because identities, even ones we've outgrown, do not go quietly. They argue for their own survival. Those two questions won't fix the pain of collapse. I want to be honest about that. Nothing fixes that pain quickly. And I distrust anyone who tells you it should. But they will tell you with real clarity whether you're grieving a genuine loss or grieving the death of a costume. And those two things require entirely different kinds of support, entirely different kinds of patience with you, and entirely different timelines for healing. So if the performance falls away, genuinely falls away, not just gets rearranged into a slightly different performance, what's actually there? Here's the uncomfortable and ultimately freeing truth. You don't know yet. And that's not a failure of self awareness. And it's not something to be embarrassed about. It's simply because you have never met the version of yourself without the survival strategy running interference in the background. Coloring every decision, every relationship, every quiet moment before you fall asleep. And this is where I say plainly what I actually believe. PhD in behavioral economics and all, and 20 odd years of sitting with the other side included. I don't think you need to become someone new. That framing, popular as it is, puts the work in the wrong direction, forward towards being idealized future self. You have to construct from scratch. I think instead, you need to remember who was there before the adaptation started. That's the entire architecture behind the book I'm writing. It's the entire architecture behind Are You Listening? Not learning a new skill from nothing, but remembering and knowing you already had before it got edited out of you for the sake of safety. One small accommodation at a time. Practically, here's where to start. And I genuinely encourage you to have a notebook nearby or your phone open because these are worth sitting with rather than hearing once and moving on. I have some journal prompts that may help. These aren't therapy in place of therapy, and I want to be genuinely clear about that. If this segment brings up real grief, real trauma, or anything that feels like more than you can hold alone, please take that to a qualified professional alongside this work. They can go side by side, not instead of it, but as a spiritual and reflective practice. These three questions are precisely where the performance starts to loosen its grip, often in ways that surprise people. I've had listeners write to me months after an episode like this one and say a single prompt cracked open something, and they'd been circling that for years. The first one is, who was I rewarded for being growing up? And who was I before the reward system started? And the second one is, what do I do automatically under stress that I've never actually questioned? Where did I learn that response and who taught it to me? And the third one, if no one was watching and nothing was at stake, no relationship, no job, no reputation, what would I actually want right now? We're going to take a break and jump into our Patreon shoutouts and a little bit about what's coming up in the world of Matilda. And then we're going to talk about predictions coming up. And we're going to end today with a guided meditation of meeting the self beneath the performance. So, if you don't know about Patreon, it is a platform. The link is in my show notes. Patreon is a platform that I go live on. I have a lot of content, manifesting content. Every day we have a new manifesting prompt. Every month we have a new manifesting challenge. Uh, I have a coffee morning, which we've just had. That's your opportunity to come say hi, talk about spiritual or current affair questions you may have. There are discounts. There is early access to readings and events. And those that are in the connected tier, we meet once a month for spiritual growth, self awareness, spiritual connection, intuition. At the end of this month, there is a workshop which is open for everyone. And it is called the Are You Listening? And it's about your connection to intuition, remembering your intuition and your guides. It is free if you are a connected tier member. If you are not a connected tier member, there are other discounts to Patreon, or you can pay full price. Link is in the bio. I just like to give my Patreon shout outs, and we're going to say hi to Jen, hi to Shira, and hi to Beauty Brilla Barella. Welcome to Patreon. I hope you are learning something about yourself and about our spiritual community. We have a laugh. Usually my lives on Patreon are a little unhinged. We talk a lot about grey sweatpants and things that aren't so spiritual. It's where we can let off and blow off some steam in these difficult times. We do talk about current affairs as well, though, I promise you, and spiritual topics. Let's jump in to my predictions for the coming months. As I said, July is going to feel like there is a death every day. I feel like we're going to get whiplash, whether that's a big name, a small name, it's a person of note, how they pass. I think we're going to see an assassination, a global assassination. I'm not necessarily saying that this is in the US. I think we're going to see an assassination attempt. I think we're going to see shock news come out of UK Parliament. We are also going to see a decision regarding the military in the UK. And we are going to see an uproar in the UK about a benefits restructure, something to do with a restructure to do with the benefits system in the United Kingdom. Here in Australia, we may see another glitch in the communication system. We had no Telstra for, I think it was close to 24 hours, which was a pain. We're going to see a premier leave their office. are either thrown, pushed, resigning. And we are going to see a threat made against a media outlet or a magazine for something they have printed. In the United States, we're going to see a lot of difficult weather. And I know people are going to go, we always have difficult weather. No, it's not. It's snow when it's been piping hot 2 weeks ago. It's floods where there's not usually floods. It's wind gusts causing damage. It's heat exhaustion. Worldwide, we are going to see a record number of deaths due to heat. And I think the fires in the UK are going to get worse. On a happy note, I think we may see legal proceedings towards the White House started. I'm going to leave that one with you. We're going to end today's episode on a global meditation, but just a reminder that those of you in the United Kingdom and Europe, I have an August Zoom mediumship event that is specifically for your time zone. Anyone in the wherever you are in the world can attend, but I am always being asked about the time zones, and I have put this one specifically because many people in the UK and Europe have complained. Please book. Please. I'd really like that. If you're in Victoria, my tickets are selling really fast for the Bendigo event. Please get on and get your tickets. I think there's might be only 20 left. I'm not sure. That is on the 15th of August at 3 p.m. in the afternoon at the wonderful Langley Hall in Bendigo. And we've also got, what else have I got going on? Oh, the Are You Listening? I've already talked about that. You don't need me plugging anything else. I want you to take a deep breath. If you are able to find a comfortable position where you can be still and sitting, that is fine. Lying down is fine. If you're driving or otherwise can't close your eyes right now, that is completely all right. Just let your gaze soften and stay safe. And come back to this section later if you'd like the full experience. Let's begin by simply arriving, taking a breath in slowly through the nose and let it go a little longer than it took to arrive. Again, there's nothing to achieve here, no performance required, which I recognize is a strange thing to say at the start of a meditation, but it matters. Given everything we've just spoken about, you don't need to do this well. You simply need to be here. Bring to mind gently a version of yourself from childhood. Not a specific memory necessarily, just a felt sense of yourself. Young, before you learned exactly which part of you was safe to show and which parts needed to stay hidden. You don't need to fix anything about what you see. You don't need to rescue them or explain anything to them. Just let them be there with you for a moment. Now, silently or aloud, whichever feels right, offer that younger self a simple sentence. Something like, you don't have to perform for me. I'm not grading you. I just want to know you. Notice what happens to your body as you offer that. There's no right response. Some of you will feel relief, and some of you will feel resistance, or nothing at all, or something that doesn't have a name yet. All of it is valid. This is not a test. Now, gently bring your awareness to the present moment, to your actual life. Today, as it is right now, ask quietly, without needing an answer, what is one small thing I do regularly that isn't actually me? That's the performance, not the self. You don't need to change it right now. You don't need to decide anything. Just notice it. Naming it is the whole practice for today. Take one more breath in and let it go slowly, all the way out. When you're ready, gently bring your awareness back into the room around you. The sounds nearby, the weight of your body. Wherever you are, there is no rush. Come back in your own time. That's the practice. Simple. And I suggest not a one-time thing. The self underneath the performance doesn't reveal itself fully in 5 minutes. It reveals itself in the willingness to keep asking gently, again and again over time. If any of this landed for you today, if you recognized your own survival self somewhere in this episode, in the stories, in the questions, in the quiet of the meditation, I want you to know that's not a diagnosis. It's an invitation. This is exactly the terrain Are You Listening was built to walk through, not to teach you something entirely new, but to help you remember what got buried underneath everything you had to become in order to stay safe, seen, and loved. Links are in the show notes, as always, and if this episode moved something in you, even slightly, I genuinely love it if you shared it with one person you know who's still performing a version of themselves that stopped being true years ago. They probably already know they are. I'm Matilda. This has been Beyond This, and I'll see you next time.